just have one response to what you said about the church. We need to come back to the church. The church needs to be more responsive to people where they are. It's the church's responsibility to respond. Not for people that, for whatever reason. I asked somebody, a young man once, I just asked the question, just tell me why you're not going to church anymore. And they said back to me, you know what? And they never answered the question, but they said this. You're the first person ever asked me that question. Now that's an indictment on the church, not on that young man.
You know, I think that storytelling is super powerful. And I think sometimes in our families, we don't do that. Sometimes we have stories, I was talking to Alice about this, we have stories in our own families and we don't tell it. We don't tell the pain, we don't tell the trial, we don't tell the tribulation. And that's from, generations past, right? Sometimes we had ancestors, this did not tell the story. We find out later many things that they did if we're fortunate. But they don't tell the story. But I think one of the things we need to get back to is telling the stories, telling our stories. I had a chance in this particular chapter to talk about my grandmother, who in Philadelphia for a number of years was the judge of elections for her precinct. And I remember her going to her events and meetings, and she had a little clipboard, and she was all official going out of the door, to her meetings, because she was the judge of elections for the precinct. I think we call them precinct delegates here, but she had she took so much honor in serving her community in that way. But these stories, we need to tell these stories. We need to tell these stories, and we need to listen. Yes. And so the young man that you're talking about was impressed that somebody cared about what he had to say. So I think there's some listening that needs to happen too. But I think we need to have more conversation, more communication about what's really going on. I read several articles about Shane Moss and Ruby Freeman, and I read the articles that talked about what they experienced after they had been falsely accused by Rudolph Giuliani and President Trump. And they literally were beaten down so badly, and I've got quotes in the book, they did not want anyone to know their name. Right. They just wanted to be anonymous. They wanted to be invisible because they were so threatened. And I think that their courage in stepping out on the national stage, meaning that now everybody knows their name, was such an act of love and sacrifice that I think that story, I hope, will encourage others to come out of hiding, to stop whispering, to speak up, to speak out against injustice where we see it and where we find it. Because God will hand you a microphone. Yes. Come on, somebody. Yes. And then you talk about the real microphone they have. What was that judgment they got against Rudolph Giuliani? How much money was it? $several hundred million? Those are the same two women we're talking about now. We need to have an epilogue to the book. That's right. But that was a defamation lawsuit, if I'm not mistaken. And we're talking in the millions now. In the millions of dollars because of the assassination of their character. And so I think that as we tell our stories and lift our voices, right, it's super powerful. Amen.